we've seen already in the previous page how the different dimensions of research. Now we'd look at how research is in fact scientific. No, it's very important to understand the scientific nature of the research process in order for us to see the stages also that we will implement in research. No, whenever we say that research follows the scientific process, and we've been asserting this one since the first video lecture on this module that you've seen about the nature of research, you'd realize that research basically begins with problem identification. If there is no problem, there is no research. And when we say problem identification, it's really a matter of zeroing in on a very specific problem. It has a lot to do with time, what time is available and things like that. But in the scientific method, as well as in the research method, problem identification plays a very important role. And as we said last time, in the previous discussions, once the problem is identified, it always already leads to a hypothetical answer. And that's a hypothesis formulation. Sometimes you create the problem with the hypothesis side by side. Like, for example, I wanted to understand how often a particular activity is conducted. Then I have to think of answers about how often, right? So degree of, so is it always, sometimes, seldom, never? But how do I turn that into a response to how often? No? Sometimes the types of questions that students ask always already, as I told you, provides us an idea about the answers that are being required by that problem. So that a scientist does not actually tread through the scientific method blindly. That's never the case. Sometimes the hypotheses that are being used or claims that are being made are based on already existing literature, on already existing data, and we are also invited to do the same. Philosophically or theologically, that means that I have engaged literature about a particular concept that I am already working on, whether that concept is being or that concept is God. In management, that concept that is already there can be a management concept about leadership styles and the different types of leadership styles. And please take note that leadership styles, there are many models of leadership styles. Sometimes these models are even conflicting. So as a researcher, I have to decide which lenses, which model or theory I will use in my study, because not all theories or models actually agree with each other. No, in philosophy or in theology, sometimes if a philosopher said this, another philosopher will say otherwise, and it's really a matter of really firmly supporting a particular conceptualization of the topic that I am really fighting for. No, so even in terms of military science, you have to understand that there are many theories in military science that I have to consider whenever I want to push forward for certain management or even parochial goals. And I need to take note of this one, because whether I like it or not, this defines my hypothesis, defines the direction of my study, in fact, even delimits my study to a certain extent. And once I am clear about my problem, no, what's my problem, no? And remember, again, when we start looking at problem, there are three movements in the problem: description, evaluation, prescription. And I have to think of that, no? I have to think about, first I have to describe what's going on. And then by evaluating, I can see relations. Are the two concepts related or are they not related? And then based on what I've discovered, what can I propose? No, what programs, for example, or what concepts do I propose? Then that's prescription. And when I'm clear in a way, no, about the questions that I ask and the suggested answers that I am expecting, and I'm sure that they are in one way or another aligned with each other, then I can now test it. No, experimentation here. Of course, in the traditional model, and we'll see that in the different models of research, experimentation refers more specifically to having a controlled setup and an experimental setup, and therefore implementing changes in the experimental setup, maintaining the controlled setup, and things like that. No, that's really experimentation. But experimentation more clearly actually means testing, no? And testing means validating, and therefore that means researching further literature to corroborate my claims or providing evidences from empirical sources, whether those empirical sources are surveys or interviews that I've made, or if not interviews that I've made and questionnaires that I've released. I can also check on recorded data, documents that are there also and are available to me. Now, after I test it, then I can now make my conclusions. No, of course, I have to make sure that the problems are in fact answered in my experimentation, and that these answers either agrees with or disagrees with the hypothesis that I've made. No, and I have to make sure, no, that based on these findings, I am able to conclude. And later on, you'd see that the conclusion is not a summary, and that I have to be able to distinguish at least my conclusion from my summary. But what I have to be certain about is that I am able to answer the question that I promised to answer. No, sometimes the students ask questions in the beginning of their thesis, but at the end of the day, they're left unanswered. No, that's tragic. And here in this process, you'd realize why I've always said write with intention, not with luck. Because whenever you write your thesis, there's always already the intention. You see it already. That's the hypothesis. And therefore, you're not leaving us to surprise. In a way, you can still surprise us as new findings that are unique to the situations that you're studying can still come out, but not really. That's not really a surprise, right? As it can validate, invalidate theory, or it can be a new theory that is pushed forward. Of course, we'd always love a new theory, but that doesn't always happen that way, and it's okay. No, it's okay. The duty of the researcher is to implement the scientific process, and once it's implemented well, regardless of the result, no, regardless of the result, it still needs to be reported as is, where is. Research follows the scientific process, and the scientific process builds on already existing knowledge. Let's look at this more deeply when we go to the next session. Thank you.